Hey, welcome to This Triggers Me, the podcast where we don't avoid our triggers but lean into them. I'm Dr. Brennan Kwiatkowski-Hartman, a sociologist who specializes in the social emotional development and well-being of boys and men and how that connects to the well-being of others.
And I'm Dr. Audra Horney. I'm a licensed psychologist and therapist for men. Given the focus of our work on masculinity and gender, tends to stir up a lot of things for a lot of people, us included.
And in a world where getting triggered is seen as something to avoid or to ridicule, the research tells a different story. Our inability to sit with our triggers and the discomfort they bring keeps us stuck and keeps us divided. So we're here to try a different approach.
This podcast is an extension of the work that we do with real people every day. We're not trying to perform perfection. We're not trying to dodge difficult conversations. We're just trying to get curious about what triggers us and what triggers other people. Hopefully, the goal of this is to access a little bit more clarity and humanity for one another.
Or maybe we'll all just get triggered together.
This work is messy. It's supposed to be. So let's get into it.
Welcome to This Triggers Me.
Is empathy for men dangerous?
Short answer, no. Long answer, no. Long answer with some caveats. Still no, but some caveats.
Okay. Well, that's all we got for today. We're good, right?
Yeah, what about you?
No. Conclusively no.
Yeah. So probably good to talk about what empathy is.
Yes. What do we mean? What do we mean when we're talking about empathy, as we're going to dive into that today? And how does that potentially differ from like technical or academic definitions of empathy?
Yeah, because I think on the surface level, people are like empathy well, actually, who knows? We're living in a world where empathy actually is quite demonized in general. But the academic part of me is like, well, empathy is like your capacity to feel with someone else, like to feel what they're going through. Mm-hmm. And I think that has relevance to this conversation. But generally speaking, when we talk about is empathy for boys and men dangerous, who should be having empathy for who, we're talking about like the amount of compassion or care towards other people, like the humanizing other people.
Yeah. Is humanizing men dangerous is what we're hopefully going to get into eventually.
And we both have the opinion that like the opposite is what's really dangerous.
Yes. The dehumanization is what gets us into trouble. And when we say empathy, we don't mean just letting people off the hook for harm. Empathy is not permission for harm. Empathy is not allowing someone to just exist fully and harmfully or aggressively. Like it's not this blank slate permission. It is, like you said, it's this compassion, it's connection, it's seeing somebody.
But the fact that we're already talking about empathy and accountability in the same conversation is because this conversation is so loaded that having empathy for boys and men is a red flag to some people.
Yes.
I said in the work that I do in our first episode is like one of my main criticisms is either I'm not empathetic enough to boys and men or I'm too empathetic towards boys and men.
Yeah. And I have been called both a misogynist and a misandrist in my content because I will go back and forth, I guess, between obviously extending empathy to men or clearly challenging men to take care of themselves. And depending on which road I take, I could be called out in either angle. So like it is tricky to even show up with empathy without fielding a lot of critique. Okay, so where should we start? Why is empathy for men, like what are the
what's contentious about it?
Yeah, like where are people butting heads and like what are the polarizations of this?
I kind of first was acquainted to this scarcity of empathy. Like there's not enough empathy to go around.
Yeah.
From 2 grade 9 girls after I told my class, hey, I'm leaving to do my PhD, focus on the social emotional development of boys and men. 2 grade 9 girls came up to me after class and were like, Mr. K, why don't you care about girls? Or don't you care about girls?
Ooh.
And for me, maybe I was naive, but like I didn't understand how separate people can view the well-being of like, maybe I was a bit too kumbaya. We're all in this together, right? And I think there's a really profound truth that we all are in this together, but that can bypass the pain and acknowledging differences as we try to come together. And so I think there is skepticism. I've had university students come up to me like months after I taught them, be like, I was worried you're misogynistic, and I was just waiting for the other shoe to drop because you told us your focus is on boys and men.
Yep.
And so then they just think that is all I care about. If I'm like, so I have to be really clear. It's like, I care about the well-being of boys and men, and I care about the well-being of others. And I'm often in this state, like, I have to prove to you I care about boys and men genuinely. And I have to prove to you that I don't mean that exclusively. And I think people just have their backup from past experiences that there is a abundance of pain and a scarcity of bandwidth collectively and individually to often sit with that pain. So everyone's trying to assess where I am when they find out about my research. And
I mean, I've felt that too. And I think it's tough for those of us who are in this space. It's a lot of work to focus on specifically the work we want to do. But in addition to that, there's this like juggling act of making sure that in addition to my like focus and commitment on my work with like men's mental health and my clients is also like this balancing act of like, but don't worry, I'm not a misogynist. But don't worry, I see women's pain too. Like I've been at men and masculinities conferences before where there have been notes about, should there be a sign outside of this conference room that says this is like official, organization, but what does it mean if somebody walks by and sees that we're having a meeting on men and masculinity?
Yeah. And
a lot of assumptions can be made.
Yeah. And I see this in some schools being super nervous to have like a student club for boys' mental health because they're worried about it becoming misogynistic, even if they have other mental health groups on campus. So there's a huge fear. Yeah. And some of it's founded, and I think some of it's not. I think some of it, actually, I think some of it's not founded, or it perpetuates a cycle of dehumanization.
Yeah, I feel like what I hear, if we were going to like summarize the camps, is that men don't deserve empathy, and then the other side, like nobody gives a shit about men's pain, and neither of those extreme groups I see wanting to actually like understand each other. That on one side, there's like this zero-sum game. Like, how are we talking about, say, for example,
we're centering men.
Yeah. Like we're talking about the male loneliness epidemic. Like the reaction, that was with a bit of a tone, not because I don't believe there's something to it, but like the reaction often online from women is, are you kidding me? Like,
yeah, like after we solve the misogyny, sexism.
Yeah, really? Like that's going to be at the top of our list right now. Like men are lonely. And then on the other side, I mean, as a therapist for men and as someone who, has sat with so many men in so much pain and who witnesses so many men like bravely showing up even on social media to share their stories, it's like, I mean, I get why some people wouldn't want this to be their top priority. And yet like, are people paying attention? Like men are not okay. A lot of men are not okay. And it's not going to help, in my opinion, like doesn't help any of us to just put these blinders up to the pain of others.
Do you think that everyone needs to care about other people's pain?
No. Not absolutely. I think even like care takes it too far. Like, could you like note that someone else is in pain? Like, can you acknowledge, or can you hold both? Can you hold that like you are in a ton of pain and you've maybe been hurt? Like speaking from a woman's perspective, like you've maybe been hurt by men, maybe lots of men. And is it also possible that not having to talk about the men who've potentially hurt you, but like men generally are also enduring a lot of pain. Like I don't even think, you know, aspirationally we have more empathy for each other, like compassion, and we're able to like witness and actually like feel connected in it. I think we're so far from that we aren't even willing to acknowledge it. To be like, yep, that probably happens.
One of the hardest dynamics I see online, where I see the most dehumanizing of men occur, is when men have dehumanized, like when there's an ample evidence of men dehumanizing women or other like gender expansive folk. And then it's like, okay, well, look at how you dehumanized us. I'm not going to humanize. Like, why do I care about your loneliness epidemic or your men's mental health? Because
look what you've done to me.
Yeah. And to me, one of the most helpful ways to understand or try to make sense of this is using a psychological concept called the trauma triangle, which was developed in the 1960s, called the drama triangle. But I don't like using that because drama is often weaponized to resort to how girls interact with each other. Right. It's like the same thing, like we talk about grade 5 is when relational aggression tends to spike in girls' development. But often that's colloquially known as drama. Yeah. I like the name of the trauma triangle also because I think it gives a generous interpretation of why people are where they are on the triangle.
Yeah.
So
there's empathy in it.
Yeah. So like the model refers to like people who can get stuck either viewing themselves and or other people in a static role. And there's one of 3 roles, and I use victim, villain, and hero. And so picture a triangle, let's have victim at the bottom here and villain and hero, is that all of these are kind of like caricatures that have their own element that they need to work with. They have their own shortcoming, their own thing that they need to work on in order to actually be empowered. And the whole goal of the trauma triangle is to recognize where you are on it and how to get off of it. And what is so difficult when we live in a world where there's so clearly, or it's so easy to be like, I'm the victim or you're the villain or I'm the hero that's going to come save the day. Yep. It's so easy to like put other people on it, and we want them to change, but it's really hard to be like, okay, the whole beauty of the trauma triangle is giving up power of letting go what other people will do and just focusing on what you can do. And this goes back to our whole philosophy of this podcast, is like what triggers me is like interruptive. If you get off of the triangle, that actually gives an opportunity for someone else to get off. So before I explain the 3 roles of heroes, villains, and victims, I think the best way to explain it is just to explain how I've been on all of those roles before. Yeah. Which I have a level of shame that comes up because it doesn't paint me in a great picture, but
it paints you as human. I think if most people were sitting here being honest, they could identify themselves on each of these points. So just to like go into this with like, this is human. I think shame. I don't even know if we mentioned the word shame in the last episode,
which we should do in this one.
Yes, because if we're just talking about empathy, but we're talking about men and masculinity and gender, and we're not talking about shame, like we're not actually talking about the real issue.
Yes, because empathy is inversely proportional related to shame. So our inability to sit with our own shame prevents us from having empathy towards others, because shame is all about like, I am bad, I'm wrong, something's wrong with me. And it actually feels, sometimes we can like take pride in feeling shame against ourselves because like, I feel so bad because I am bad, I'd messed this up. But we actually limit our capacity to show up for the other person and what they need because they were the hurt party. And so empathy and shame are so connected. And I think our inability to sit with our shame is the hardest thing to get off the trauma triangle.
Yeah, because like you said, they're inverse. So if the trauma triangle gives you access to that empathy, then it would make sense that shame is what could hold you back.
Yeah.
Okay. So where have you been on the triangle?
Tell you another story.
Walk us through.
So my
wife
gave birth to twins 10 days before COVID lockdowns. Ooh. This was in the middle of my PhD. I had just gotten statistical significance. So I had 170 participants in my PhD research on the Friday. Twins came Sunday, and then COVID lockdowns. But before that, we got norovirus from someone who gave us like a free meal, our friends.
No.
So we were like,
right before she had the twins?
No, right after. So she had C-sections, like terrible.
Oh gosh.
Long story short is that was a very difficult season of life.
Yeah.
I had 2 years left of my PhD, and I did the majority of my PhD work from 9:30 p.m. to 4:30 a.m. Isn't that pretty impressive? Says the hero part of myself.
That's a word for it.
So here's like when I operate in the hero, and the hero often steps in and kind of tries to like save the day, but often is unasked for, and they often grow resentment because
like they're the martyr.
Yeah. And so it's like I had this like, aren't I like an amazing husband? Like here's this guy studying masculinity, and like fatherhood is a huge aspect of masculinity research.
Yeah,
I
look
love
at me
diving
walking
into
the
it.
walk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like my wife's pretty lucky.
Was she saying that?
Not eventually. And then the victim part of me, which feels powerless in the situation.
Yeah.
It's like I can do nothing. I need someone else to fix my situation. The victim part of me was like, this is unsustainable. Like this is not good for my mental health, for anyone.
Yeah.
Like I'll be waking up at 7 because the kids would wake up then too. And so it's like, it was not wise.
No.
But it was also Survivor.
Yep.
Like, what do you do?
What else? What other
support?
options did you have?
Yeah, not many. And then the villain part of me, and the villains like to blame. Mm-hmm. And so the villain part of me was like kind of connected to the hero part of like the resentment building of like, doesn't my wife see like, couldn't I just be kind of more calloused and like taking more time during the day because I'm struggling? But then that kept me from seeing how she's struggling. And long story short, how I remember it happening, and my wife agrees with this overall, is when she approached me of like just feeling the resentment in our house from me. It was like to get off. It was my villain part was like, I felt a lot of shame come up. The hardest part for the villain is the shame that comes up. And so I had a lot of shame, and it's very quick that if you spiral in that shame, then you become your own villain and you start just blaming yourself. But that actually doesn't change things. Like the hardest irony of this all is being able to hold shame and transcend it in a compassionate type of way. So anyways, so not saying that happened overnight, but I realized this is not who I want to be. And so then the villain was like, okay, this isn't good. Something needs to change. And so I had a pep talk with my hero part, and like the hero part was like, Brendan, you're not a hero for living the way that you want to live. Like you're not a hero for showing up as a father the way that you actually want to show up as a father. That's just living in integrity. And so I was like, oh yeah, I'm not a hero for this. This is just friggin' integrity. And so that helped me get off the hero part. And then the victim part, what was really important for victims, and when we're talking about this conversation, is not to bypass the pain of victims or the hurt of victims. It wasn't like, oh, this isn't a hard situation. The victim was acknowledging like, this is a really tough time of life. Like, what can I do though? What small change, what little bit of agency can the victim do? And I was like, you know what? I probably waste like at least an hour on YouTube to 4:30. Like, how efficient am I from 3:30 a.m. to 4:30 a.m.? I was like, yeah, probably not. So I made some adjustments, and then I at least changed it. So I went to bed at 3:30 a.m. instead of 4:30 a.m. And I did less sleep sabotage for myself.
The empathy or the validation for the victim, like recognizing that part and seeing like maybe you do have some agency here. Like what I hear a lot of men say, what I witness is like when men are in that, like I don't even know how most men would feel about being put into that like victim role, but
men, in my experience, hate being seen as the victims.
Right.
Even if they play the victim in some other way, but they like so many teenage boys I interviewed were like said things and caveat, I'm not the victim in this.
Right. Like that word is triggering.
Yeah.
And I feel like before men what I see is before men even allow themselves to like acknowledge, like, I'm struggling, like I'm hurting. It's the like, it is what it is. Period. Full stop. Like there's no, I don't see much willingness. And it makes me wonder how much of that is like the gender role. Like I think victim is a gendered term. I think victim has become a gendered term. And so it makes me wonder how much of that, not just the word itself and how that is triggering, but like the experience of recognizing like I have less control here than I wish I did, is like a threat to one's masculinity.
I think that's a dynamic that comes up with like actual victim blaming of blaming, like in sexual assault cases, like blaming the victim for what they're wearing shows that you actually think that the bad guy has no agency. So you blame the person that you think has the most agency. So you have less tolerance for the victim because you can just see what they do. Whereas you actually keep the villain, like you don't have hope for the villain to change.
Yeah. And that's how I feel a lot of men, like when I'm talking to men who are struggling, it's like a lot of shame and self-blame and very little self-compassion.
Yeah.
And so that would keep anyone in whatever role they may feel stuck in.
Do you have a lot of men that have a hard time liking or loving themselves?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and I guess as a bit of a disclaimer, like as a therapist here on this podcast, showing up here and having conversations with you about like men I work with or the experiences I've had, when I show up on social media, I do the same. Like I'm never going to be talking about specific clients here. I'm going to be maintaining confidentiality and privacy. And so I'm speaking in themes and generalities, and I'll maybe speak a little bit more specifically about interactions I have with men on social media where it's public and not confidential. But the ethical side of me and like the protective of my client side of me wants to just put that out there.
So if you're one of Audra's clients,
I'm not talking about you.
No. But just know that it might feel that way because so many men experience the same things.
Yes. The number of times what I will speak to a lot is like what I say in session and like what I say often when men are describing something they're going through and telling me that nobody gets it. Nobody else has felt this way. Like I can't talk to anybody about it because like nobody would be able to relate. That like nobody hates themselves as much as I do. Like nobody has this much self-loathing, the shame, the self-criticism, the self-loathing. Like the number of times I have a client reference being alone in that. And I just say like, you're the fifth guy today sitting on that couch saying the same thing. So I think, you know, when we're talking about is empathy for men dangerous? Like, I think part of that question is like, is men showing themselves empathy dangerous? Like, is it dangerous for men to show themselves compassion?
And as a man, not as a researcher, showing myself compassion has been way harder than self-hatred.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I would have argued with you that it's appropriate and healthy to hate myself till I was 28 years old. And
what would that argument have been?
Oh, it would have been...
What was the justification?
Well, there was definitely a whole religious component to it of the belief of original sin, which I'm not sure if you're familiar with, that we are born inherently evil and wrong. And so we're not good inherently. It's only through salvation. So that was a huge message.
So you took that one and
I took that one in
doubled
hard.
down.
Yeah, which is interesting because when I talked to my parents about it as an adult, it was, and this is actually just a good thing, but like child development, it's like, it's not just the things we teach our kids or tell our kids. It's like, what do they actually pick up on?
Yeah.
Because like, I definitely picked up on I am wrong inherently.
Message
I'm bad.
received.
Yeah. And then my dad, I remember being confused. He's like, but we also told you that you're wonderfully made. Like there's religious aspects about that. It's like, yeah, I didn't take that one in.
No, that one didn't seem relevant, Dad.
Yeah. It's like, if I always say if I was a priest or a bishop in my past life, like I would have self-flagellated.
It sounds like you did emotionally.
Yeah, I did.
So, but what was the, like as a young adult, as a teen, like why was that advantageous to hate yourself? Like how did that serve you?
Oh, Well, think of
Like you would
the
have
trauma triangle.
Yeah,
is
like
that
would have been like, for whatever reason, that seemed like the better way, the preferred way to exist versus like self-compassion.
to me, this does tie into so much religious, spiritual trauma.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like that is where it was first planted.
Yeah.
We don't have to go there.
Yeah. Well, it's one of those things that we're not on the episode about therapy yet.
Not yet.
But where you start unpeeling and it's like, oh, this is difficult.
Yeah.
And like, that's the thing about self-compassion. It's like, wait, for me to actually view like, if I actually have inner goodness in me, like how transformational my whole life is going to be, like that is so much more scary to update that script and to live out from a sense of worthiness than a worthlessness. I'm good at operating out of the worthlessness part.
It's more familiar.
Yeah. And that's the thing about trauma too, is that our nervous systems can get used to a state of chaos.
Habituate to something. If it's constantly there, it might not feel good, but it feels comfortable because it is familiar.
Yeah.
And then your nervous system is like, all right, we know this. Walk in.
Yeah.
We can handle this.
Yeah.
And anything else is a threat.
Yeah. So then if we look at the trauma triangle from like this socialized conversation about men and women, particularly here in this conversation.
Yeah.
It's that we see, like we place groups of people, or we can get in danger of placing groups of people in these static roles of like, I've been in some dark corners of the internet.
I know your algorithm is scary.
Yeah. Of where like it is easy to paint men as villains, like just to keep them there.
Yeah. I mean, I was less aware. I feel like I navigate in a way that feels comfortable for me on the internet. And I feel like you just like dive into the dark corners and like the grit. And so you've shared a few of these posts that thankfully aren't showing up on my algorithm because I do not have this like deep hatred for men, but I see these awful, like I know as a therapist how much men are going through, and then but that extends from like my empathy for men and like wanting to know their story. But then when I see some of these posts by women like dehumanizing, demonizing, like putting down men in these awful ways, and then like tens of thousands of likes on a comment that to me is like so awful. Like it hurts me. Like I don't, like in those moments, I don't blame men for having such guards up and not feeling safe speaking up about their struggle, because it doesn't in those moments look like there's much room for it.
Which I think the nature of the internet is not doing a service to anyone, because they've done some research of like assuming that people are meaner online than they are in real life. And the vast majority is like, oh, people who are miserable online
are miserable in real life.
Yeah. And it's just that people who are less so tend to just not engage in these things. And we know that polarity drives the
Yelp
algorithm.
Reviews. Like you're going to get 5-star and you're going to 1-star.
Yeah.
And people in the middle are just like kind of coasting, enjoying their lives, eating a good meal at that restaurant.
So like you can find any group of person on the villain, victim, hero aspect
quickly and easily.
Yeah. And so can we talk about the male loneliness epidemic? Because like we have both have bias of working
with men.
Yeah. Like I work with all genders, but I still have a slant.
Yeah. And like, I guess that's the elephant in the room, you know, is empathy for men dangerous? We have built careers on the belief, I think, that we need more empathy for boys and men.
Yeah.
And we practice that and like kind of flex that muscle ourselves regularly, professionally. And then I think we both have complicated relationships with it personally. But yeah, the male loneliness epidemic it's a complicated topic.
Yeah. Yeah. Which it's
a triggering topic.
Yes. And I think it makes sense using the trauma triangle as well, because it depends how you look at it. So like I approach the male loneliness epidemic from the more academic tunnel vision view.
And I think probably personal as a man view too.
Yeah, just hearing like describe what it's like to be a teenage boy in one word. And like lonely is one of the main words that came out in my research and other research. And like this loneliness is so disconnected from blaming women for their loneliness. Whereas then realizing, oh, this conversation around the male loneliness epidemic, whereas like, let's make fun of men for being lonely. And we're both probably quite closely connected to men who are suicidal.
Yes.
Who
might be surrounded by people, who might be known as like social and like connected people, but feel completely alone.
Yeah.
Like they bring no benefit to the people around them. If anything, maybe believe that others would be better off if they weren't here.
Yeah. So then hearing people make fun of men's loneliness is like a jarring thing sometimes. But then the content they're consuming is the men that are blaming women for their loneliness. You don't have sex with.
Yeah. Like if women would just have sex with men, we wouldn't be so fucking lonely.
Yeah. Which we have to do a whole episode on sex in itself. But here is how like, so depending on who you are, like for the male loneliness epidemic, let's look at the 3 roles of the victim triangle or the trauma triangle, is that men sometimes can view themselves as the victims, whether they will admit to that or not.
They probably wouldn't use that word.
No, they wouldn't want to. But they're definitely seeing themselves as the victims. Like they're powerless to change this.
Yeah.
And like and then women are like the state of this world, not dating, politics, feminism, whatever label, certain women are to blame for this.
Yeah.
And so they're the villains. But then women are also the heroes that can save them from their loneliness if they had the more traditional role, or who knows what exactly that plays. But that's one way that we can view it. And then the reverse is women viewing themselves as, okay, they're the victims in all of these areas. And, oh, men have this one area of pain. Well, they're the villains that set up this whole system. They're just meeting the consequences of their own actions.
Right.
I don't know if there's a hero in that dynamic.
When I hear you talking about like the teenage boys or like your research participants, or when I'm thinking about, you know, men that I've worked with, like I think there's such a difference for me and maybe a lot of people in talking about men versus talking about a man. Like, is empathy for a man in your life dangerous versus is empathy for men dangerous? Like, I think, unfortunately, and this is, I think, a product of this like polarized world right now, is I think, you know, when we think about men as like a entity, a collective, there can be like, that can bring up a lot of like pain, animosity, hurt, blame. Like there can be a lot of negative reactions, and versus like, does a man deserve empathy? And like that's what makes my work so like rewarding, and why I'm like so passionate and like just want to do this. Like I don't think about retirement. Like I feel lucky that that I get to do this every day, because having the opportunity to sit with a man and understand his story and access empathy for him, even to me, like feels very different than like, what about the collective whole, or like men in the comments section.
This is the sociologist versus psychology, forest versus tree, and having to switch it back and forth. Yeah. And I think that's a skill our whole society needs to do a bit better.
But it's tricky. Like even I know I've mentioned this to you, but recently I was just innocently starting my day, walking into Starbucks, grabbing my drink, and heading into work, right? I had probably had a full day of clients scheduled. And as I'm walking in to get my drink, this like table of 3 or 4 old men, like whistled me. And there was like nobody in there. And it was just me. And then I hear one of them like shove one of the guys and is like, "Oh, cut it out. Don't do that." And they like snicker. And I was fucking enraged. Like, I stormed out of there, but like, what I wanted to do was like pull up a chair. Like I pictured myself like flipping a chair around like cool teacher style and like sitting backwards and just being like, you don't know who you just fucked with. Like, let's talk about it, because this isn't about me. This is about you. What's going on? And I like stormed out to Mike. I didn't do that. But it was like, what came up in me was like, dudes, like, I'm actually one of the ones that's trying to help you here. Maybe I'm getting a little like amped. I'm like feeling it again. Yeah. I'm picturing myself in that moment and just being like, you're not helping yourselves. Like, I'm actually out there on the front lines. Like, I am putting myself in the crosshairs to try to show up and not just show up for you, but like challenge other people. Like, I'm challenging other therapists. I'm challenging partners of men. Like, I'm challenging moms. Like, I'm challenging people to see men in this like softer way. Mm-hmm. And then something like that happens, and I just want to be like, you're not helping yourselves. And so like, for me, like, I exist so often in this place of like real commitment to this work and empathy for men. And then I have experiences in the world, like, as a woman, where like, I think part of the reason I was so triggered in that moment, because like my hypervigilance was like, this isn't safe.
Yeah.
Like, this is a threat to your safety. And like, I didn't think that, right? But that fight or flight response was not just connected to like, don't you respect me as a therapist for men? I am advocating for you. Like, that's where my intellectual brain took it. But at its most visceral level, it felt very unsafe. And men are typically the only ones that make me feel that way. I mean, part of the training as a psychologist, as a therapist, is around empathy. And hopefully you're only getting into the field if you have decent access to empathy. But
we both know that that's not the case all the time.
No, it is absolutely not. And we'll talk about therapy for men, and it's not all good out there. And so like, I feel like I have such access to empathy for men regularly in my life. And then those moments, like, and I see it in the, you know, I get the comments too. And some of the comments, the ones that it puts me in a position, like, this is where I get challenged most, is like, you guys are making it really hard for me. And if I'm actually one of the ones standing up and being like, hey, everyone, men are in pain. Like, a woman there's very few female therapists who are showing up. There are a lot of therapists on social media. There are very few female therapists on social media speaking up about therapy for men, or speaking up on behalf of men. Yeah. Very, very few. So if I'm one of the few and I'm attacked for that, like, dude, like, do you guys want empathy? Do you actually even want it? Because it seems like when I'm trying to work for it, you are doing your damnedest to block it.
And this is partly reminiscent of the teenage boys that I've worked with in the past that like have such amazing emotional vulnerability. And when I go to schools, this is the number one thing schools say. It's like, these boys are amazing one-on-one, but in groups, they're just like packs of wolves. Mm-hmm. And it's like, when the boys I work with, who I know have such amazing hearts, also then get expelled. And it's just like, dude,
what are you doing?
But I think that's because we want to curate. I guess there's a level of control. We want the world to better see and understand boys and men.
Yes.
And so every time the boys and men do something,
when something goes out of bounds, you're like, oh, we almost had it.
Yeah.
It was so close. And then it all shatters again. And we're putting the pieces back together.
Yeah. And I do want to go back to like the caveat at the very beginning, is that I think it's important for anyone to be aware of where they find their empathy flow more easily. Because where I have seen empathy for men be problematic is more about specific situations where there is a propensity, like there is a feminist term called himpathy.
Yeah.
Are you familiar with it?
I am, yes.
Yeah, which is like, we're so much more likely to have empathy for men in situations that we care more about men than anyone else. So they devised the term himpathy. I've never used that term before, but I've seen it in action in certain situations.
Where do you see that show up?
Hypothetically, I've seen it in some church congregations
Hypothetically.
where
nice.
the abuse of people in power, it was like, is justified way more easily. Especially when it comes to sexual things. It's like, oh, like it goes back to behavior or biology of being a man.
Yeah.
Or it's like from all these different things. And so the empathy is disproportional.
Yeah.
So I think everyone does need to assess, and for us as well to be like, okay, I think as a man in a situation, sometimes like I can understand what went through this teenage boy's head. I can understand some things that I know that I have had teacher colleagues that like, you're not understanding. Like you're only seeing one level of this and I'm seeing multiple levels of this.
Sure.
But then I have to be aware of like, what levels of this am I not seeing about someone else?
Yeah, but like, isn't that part? I mean, that's just part of life. Like we're not privy to all of it.
No.
You think sometimes your like empathy can be like a shield or like a veil, like it.
I think.
Like it limits how much you're able to see?
I think even crazier than that is that we can pretend and have this kind of form of empathy for other groups of people that actually puts them in a hero role of like, oh, mothers are amazing. They're superheroes doing all like the childbirth, all of this crazy thing. And you put them on the pedestal, and pedestals feel different than putting them in a pit of dehumanization, but pedestals are another form of dehumanization because you're not seeing them fully. It's like you want to bypass the grittiness of that and just be like, oh, they're amazing, and celebrate them. And sure, it's probably better to be celebrated than derided, but you're not actually seeing them in their experience.
Yeah.
So you're kind of having this empathy of like, oh, mothers go through so much. Or I don't know why I'm just honing in on mothers here. This group of people has this really hard thing. It happens actually a lot of time in special needs communities as well.
Yeah.
And then this is like my master's is in special education, and so many mothers or parents have said like how unhelpful it is when people say like, oh, I could have never done that. I could never raise a kid like that. It's like, what? Like, yeah, this is hard.
Yeah.
Like, but like you want to have that superhero narrative that puts people. It feels good. It feels like we're actually doing something honoring for the other person, but we're not seeing how messy. Like, I think the messiness of getting off the trauma triangle is recognizing, oh, I'm a hero, villain, and victim so often.
Yes.
Like I do this workshop, and I've had so many parents just be like, oh, I am this so often in my daily life. Oh, so many different genders.
I think that's part of like accessing like self-compassion and then being able to extend that into empathy for others is like being able to be honest about our own ways that we occupy these roles, like the ways that we are hurting, the ways that we have hurt others, the ways that we have tried to rise above that, be that hero. Like that is the messy human experience. And when we're talking about boys and men at a whole, and we're just like locking them into a role, and then we're talking about women, and even like one of the things that feels most it's not really triggering, but it's like irritating, is when I'll get comments that say I don't like being called like lady. Like it feel like sometimes it's like little lady or like this lady. Like it just feels very patronizing and like, fuck off, I'm a woman. Like it feels like a man putting me down, or like this weak woman, like when it almost like putting me into a like fragile victim role. Like I feel myself like want to bust out of that too. That might be some of my, I feel like I have an inner bro to me. I feel like I feel like I exist I think this is one of the reasons why I really enjoy working with men, is like I can relate a lot. And so I'm like, you know, like I felt triggered at Starbucks and I wanted to like fight the guys. I was not freezing or running or fawning. But I think that like recognizing, like being able to do that your own self-reflection. And like, even as we're having this conversation here, like I hope people listening are, you know, if you had reactions to like something we're saying around like a comment that might be said, like if, you know, there is, okay, that let's say I get a comment like, oh, at least you're getting attention from men. Like at least you have the option, like at least you had the opportunity to be sexualized, or like, okay, why is that so triggering for me? Like, not just the like where I go, what feels safer is like, screw you guys. Like, I'm trying, but like, what is actually going on for me that feels so dysregulating to get that sort of a comment? And I think I learn more and I'm able to access more by having more of that self-understanding than I am trying to figure out what some random commenter thought.
Yeah. And I want to go back to how getting off the trauma triangle with my wife played out, because this shows like how we heal in community, which is so much, it's like we have so much pain in community, but community is also such an important aspect of healing.
Yeah.
And that's the rub. Like it's both. And like we can do a lot of healing in ourselves, but also need other people. So
yeah, like we're social beings. Like so much of our pain is relational that it makes sense that our healing would be relational too.
So it's like acknowledging that if my wife had approached me about like in a more fight way, whereas she regulated herself first and approached me in the way that I had, I guess, a better chance at receiving it, which is like acknowledging emotional labor, emotional work that way, but is recognizing that if my wife had gone in a more fight response, it would have been so much easier to stay on the triangle myself, because I could have put her somewhere on the triangle way more easily. Yeah. But like my hope for change is having those day-to-day interactions. Like we're so fortunate to get interactions with boys and men.
Yeah, I know. So it really does feel like a gift. Like I have access to this, like this emotion even around like this passion for this, because I'm interacting so like closely and personally. Like
I've seen boys and men in some terrible unhealth, harm, like grossness, and I've seen boys and men in some just amazing beauty, goodness. Yeah. And
you've witnessed like the full spectrum of the mess and how complicated it is.
And it is sad that there seems to be a large proportion of society that hasn't seen some goodness in boys and men. Or I don't know, I saw a comment recently that thinks that 80%, they got thousands and thousands of likes about like, I think 80% of men aren't able to change or improve to be better.
Like what's been so astonishing to me over these last few years, like I've only been showing up as a therapist for men on social media for about 2 years now. And like, although I know I've been talking about some of the pushback and hate I get, like overwhelmingly what I experience are men like desperate for support, and not from me. Like, oh my gosh, like there's therapy for me. Like there are therapists specialized in men's, like there are therapists who want to work with men. Like, how do I find them? Where do I go? Like it led me to, I was getting so many inquiries from social media about men looking for a therapist that it led me to like create this directory of therapists for men that I'm like constantly asking more therapists to join so that men had somewhere to go, because my experience was not men like blaming other people or saying like women will solve this for us, or even saying like we don't want this or need this. Like men are, I think, like craving that sort of like connection and empathy, and
they are, like research wise, like empirically they are. That was the most humbling thing from my PhD research, was that every single grade 12 teenage boy said that they wanted more emotional closeness in their relationships, in their male relationships specifically, but almost all of them thought that none of the other men in their lives wanted the same thing. Ugh.
And that's what breaks my heart, is the like, you know, the men who believe like I want this but nobody else does. Like that doesn't end in grade 12. Like that continues into 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s plus.
And I don't think it's as simple as like, oh, it's men's problem. Like it is men's problem, and men do have a ton of agency to change that. Like it's gonna be awkward, but I think that the blame is also societal as well. Yeah. Like if we want to understand men's emotional and spiritual disconnection that happens, like there's a boy crisis around the age of 5 and around the age of 14, when boys are at a heightened risk of disconnecting from authentic parts of themselves. And if you were to understand their reasons for doing so, I have a hard time imagining that wouldn't increase your empathy, that it's not at all even closely related to blaming women
Right.
for their loneliness or things like that.
Right.
Um,
But when you don't have any sort of intervention, when you don't catch it then, and it just continues to snowball, and these boys become men who I feel like further and further away from that authentic part of themselves, then it is like, this is where my empathy comes out, is like, oh, like even these men who like go to therapy and show up in whatever version they do with like this hope to get to that authentic, but no idea. It's not like they're actively masking away their authentic self. They're like, I have no idea who the fuck that guy is. Like, I don't know. Last time I saw him, I was 7 years old. And like I have so much respect for men who are willing to, especially like later in life, like do that work to try to get back the things they've lost. And, you know, I'm able to have this like front lines, like witnessing of that personal growth, like where I may be the therapist in the room, but like, I'm not doing the heavy lifting. Like, I'm there to support and facilitate and walk side by side, but like, I'm not dragging them to grow. Like, the men are doing this work and want that change. And if like, don't we all deserve like a little bit of support and like empathy as we're digging into something that is like so vulnerable?
Do you think men need more empathy for women and all gender identities? Like, do you think there's more empathy that's needed?
I'm a stickler for like the semantics of something. Like,
Okay,
I think we need to give men more credit. And I think like men are capable of a lot more. And if we gave them that opportunity, then I think we'd be able to access more empathy for them. And I often think men aren't given the chance.
That reminds me of when I shared the top 3 reasons why teenage boys start to suppress their emotions. Tied for number 1, it was fear of judgment from others.
Yeah.
And the tied with that was fear of being a burden to others. And so often people are surprised or like shocked. It's like, oh, there's a empathetic reason that they want to protect the people.
They give a shit about anybody else.
Yeah.
There's a lot of ugly things you can see on social media. And if you're in the right corners of the internet, you can see some really amazing things. And I wish there was more witnessing of the desire. Like, men want to be better for the people around them. Like, that is my like overwhelming experience, is like, I want, like, they deserve a better version of me.
And I think one of the hardest stumbling blocks is having empathy for themselves.
Yes. There's so much shame. And I feel like we need to do a whole episode on shame, because that's one of those emotions where rarely do I have men in my comment sections, in my DMs, or in my office using the word shame. But when I reflect it back, they're like, yes, that's it. And so it's such it's almost like the air they breathe, that they don't even know how to name it. But once you do, I think it helps to even be able to distance yourself from it a little bit. But until you do, they're drowning in it.
So what do you think about when we look at the forest, like the reaction that we might be getting, or the reaction I feel in myself? Let me own it. My own reaction is that I'm afraid that even through this whole podcast, there'll be this idea or this being like, but the forest of men is still better than the forest of LGBTQ or of women identities that is burning on fire. And
that forest of men has done a lot to harm these other trees.
I think it just goes down to, like, for sure, the cycle of dehumanization. It's hardest, I believe it's hardest to humanize people that are actively dehumanizing you.
Yes.
And so it's easy to get caught in that. I don't have any agenda for someone else. Like, you have to humanize someone else. No. I just know, as someone who's dehumanized myself, and I've dehumanized groups of people unintentionally before. Mm-hmm. And maybe I still am but that's not the way I want to live. That's not the way that feels good and aligned with my values. And so I can't tell people to be more empathetic.
No.
But I genuinely think that empathy, I want people's pain to be seen and witnessed. And I think that this whole conversation is just showing how many people's pain, how much pain people are in, how much pain is not witnessed. Even if we hear about it, like men will say, we hear about women's pain all the time, about marginalized communities' pain all the time. Mm-hmm. No one hears about our pain.
We're tired of hearing about their pain.
Imagine if those groups' pain was actually validated. Right. Like, we might hear about it more than men's pain in some ways, mm-hmm. but I don't think their pain is seen and witnessed and validated.
No. And otherwise there wouldn't be still such animosity and energy around, like, no, see us.
Yeah.
How dare you suggest we see you? Like, you haven't seen us yet.
Yeah. I've actually started getting comments, some DMs of men who are like, how do you not have a hard time with all the critters that are shitting on men all the time? And I don't feel as triggered by it, because I also know how good boys and men are too. And so I do feel defensive of men and boys sometimes in some conversations.
So do I. And then I feel angry at boys and men sometimes too.
Here's where I see, like, the polarization switch is when there's certain, like, there's a number of women who grew up in a type of feminism that was very anti-men.
Yeah.
And then when they all of a sudden got some glimpse of men being humans, they became super anti-feminist. Mm-hmm. And I feel like that's a whole problem with the polarization mm-hmm. of, like, when you get stuck on the trauma triangle and only seeing people. You have one option. Yeah. Which we'll do an episode of feminism. Is like, that's not the only branch of feminism.
No. Well, that's a little teaser, a little Easter egg for a future episode.
Trigger you a bit now for.
But, like, if after this conversation we can think a little bit more about, like, why if I do have such a hard time extending empathy to men, like, where is that rooted for me? Like, where's mm-hmm. my pain that I feel like I deserves to be noted? And if as a man you feel like nobody gives a shit, like, nobody cares that I'm suffering, there's why ask for this sort of support? I'm not going to get it. Like, well, you know, as someone who's showing up and trying to help men, and I've been called both a misogynist and, you know, I've been attacked from both sides. Like, are you actually letting anyone in? If there was someone there who wanted to extend you empathy, like, are you in so much pain that you can't even see them?
And can you become your own emotional safe haven rather than requiring someone else to? And I will say that, like, when I taught psychology 12 in university, sometimes I show a documentary called The Mask You Live In, and my courses tend to be more girls in those classes. And this might surprise some people, but the most common reaction from women watching this is, I didn't realize how many restrictive messages I was giving to my brothers or the men in my life, and I need to change. Yep. So I've seen a lot of women also reflect on the ways that they have put a cage around boys and men.
Mm-hmm. How dysregulated did you get today?
There's a part of me in one section. I'm just trying to, I feel like I'm people pleasing, trying to cater everyone's different emotional reactions that they could have.
I'm worried that we spoke so much on, like, yes, empathy for men, and here's why. And there's, like, the part of me that probably, like, that, like, feminist part of me that's like, did you do enough to balance that out? It's tough. It's tricky. But that's the point, right? Like, that's why we're here.
I think the point is that, like, I think pain is unfair.
Yep.
It's unfair that people have to go through pain. It's unfair that children have to process their parents' unresolved trauma and parentify their parents.
Yep.
And healing is also unfair. It's not fair that the person who should be leading healing is. And so all these conversations are innately unfair. It's unfair that dehumanizing someone else who dehumanizes you doesn't get anywhere. Like, what capacity do you have? That's where I found, like, dehumanizing people has not.
It doesn't get you anywhere.
Yeah. To wrap this up, I just hope people's pain is validated and witnessed. There's Dr. Frank Anderson, psychologist, medical doctor, that I really like. He says that, like, what's one of the best ways to reduce the amount of angry. This is a gross paraphrase of what he's saying.
Okay.
I'm misapplying it. But how do you reduce people's. How many people continue to be angry after they're seen and heard?
Mm-hmm.
Not many. And I think I would love for more people to be seen and witnessed.
Me too.